Falls over the crowd. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your schedules, both our students, our many students, and our panelists to join us this evening for what we hope you will find to be an interesting and quite useful program about career opportunities in the fields of compliance and investigations. We have assembled a variety of panelists here from a diverse range of experiences in the for-profit, nonprofit worlds, and we hope that you'll take the opportunity to listen to their feedback on how they got to be where they are today, and take the opportunity to ask questions when our moderators are ready for that. So on behalf of Professor Sarah Duggan and myself in CICR, and Professor Jack Murphy, who couldn't be here today, but blessed the program, and also Dean Dietrich, who is our video DJ this evening, who recorded the program for those students who wanted to attend but could not. Once again, welcome to all of you. Let me introduce our student moderators who are going to run the show tonight. Adam Wombold from CICR, Robert Hill from the Securities Law Program. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Professor Flannan, for the introduction. My name is Adam Womble. I'm one of the certificate candidates for the Compliance Investigations Corporate Responsibility Program. Thanks again for joining us this evening. Just a couple quick things before we begin. First, we're going to leave a little bit of time at the end of the program for Q&A, so stick around if you're interested in that. Secondly, if you need to leave early for class, panelists are aware, so feel free to get up and go to class, don't be late. And so also the program is being recorded, so you can check back if you miss anything at the end. And then lastly, at the end of the program, we're going to have a reception out in the atrium, so I hope you can join us and speak with our panelists. So we have 6 fantastic Catholic Law alumni as our panelists today to discuss the career opportunities in compliance, corporate investigations, and securities law areas. First, we have Patrick Burke, who works at the Office of General Counsel for the Archdiocese of Washington. Next, we have Lee Stolen, who is Counsel in Investment Management at Davis Polk in New York, and previously served as General Counsel and Chief Compliance Officer at Tweedy Brown Company. Next, we have Bill Edwards, Assistant General Counsel for Cybersecurity, Legal, Ethics, and Compliance at Constellation Energy Company or Corporation. Next is Matthew Mycutt, Senior Privacy and AI Compliance Specialist at Amazon. And next is Matthew Marchiori, an associate at Hogan Lovells, working in Hogan's Investigations, White Collar, and Fraud Group. And then lastly, we have Kelsey Vincent, an associate at Barnes and Thornborough, working in healthcare, government investigations, and claims. And then both Patrick, Matthew Marchiori, and Kelsey are CICR certificate recipients. So with that, I'll pass over to Rob to get started.
Thank you all very much for being here. Thank you to the students as well for being here. I want to get started by just doing a quick kind of 1-minute summary about kind of where you, how you got to where you are in your career and in the corporate investigations and compliance world. I'm going to start with you and work our way down.
Sure. So first and foremost, proud initial graduate of CICR program, so that's most important, I think. After graduating, I was working full-time at the university doing grant management, so that's how I got started in the compliance world, doing grant management and employment management for federal research grants through Catholic University. After graduating, I clerked before going to an employment labor law firm in DC, where I learned that I really loved employment law and really hated litigation. So the opportunity rather early on in my career arose to go in-house with the Catholic Church, something near and dear to my heart, my faith, and was very blessed to have the support of one of my professors who made a call and got me in the door, and I was blessed to be able to start doing that. So now I work in-house with the Archdiocese doing compliance work for close to 200 corporations that fall under the Archdiocese umbrella, as well as 5,000 employees and a whole bunch of different state and federal grants, and all the work that goes along with
So I started off at a law firm, and I kind of happened into compliance. I wouldn't have been one of you guys here. I wasn't terribly interested in compliance, so you're miles ahead of me. I worked at a law firm for a bunch of years, and then we were moving out of New York City, and this job as a chief compliance officer in Connecticut came available. And I loved it. I was the CCO of the funds for several years, and then I became the CCO and general counsel of the investment advisor itself. Having said that, after 12 years, I just returned to the law firm world. So now I'm working at Davis Polk, but there's a lot of compliance work that gets done in law firms too. So I'm still got my finger on the pulse.
And compliance probably started with me before law school. I was a paralegal before entering Catholic, and in those roles, I took on a number of different jobs, anything that the law firm really had for me. But at the time, Enron Corporation was collapsing, and there was a lot of work in investigations for energy trading. So I got assigned to almost a 24-hour shift staffing energy trading investigations as a lonely paralegal in Washington, supporting 11 attorneys. So it was baptism by fire. And then once you get into hiring and recruiting, law firms start looking at your resume and say, it's interesting energy experience. You don't see that very often. And so you're kind of on track at that point. So I went to a law firm for a year and then switched gears to the government to see if energy law was something I wanted to do full time. And then the Northeast blackout happened in 2003 and a whole set of grid operations standards were born. So I was literally there for the creation of an entire new regime around compliance. And so that's kind of been the sticking point that's taking me through where I am now in cybersecurity.
Well, first off, I'm happy to be here. This is a program that wasn't available when I was here leaving the school in 2010. I was a member of the securities law certificate program under Professor Lipton. And from that experience, I learned up securities law, financial banking, worked at the SEC, and that's where I really kind of learned more about compliance investigations, and enjoyed the puzzle of it all. It was at a time where there was a tremendous amount of freezing hiring going on in the government. I thought I'd be in the SEC, and it didn't work that way. I was lucky to find an introduction through Catholic law with IBM. They were building up a global business services division and doing consumer and data privacy for government. I was just very fortunate to find great opportunities to ensure, as you mentioned, cybersecurity, working in cybersecurity compliance, working in data privacy, and ensuring the system development had controls in place to protect those customers who are U.S. citizens and non-citizens. And from there, there was a wide open amount of different work. So followed advisory work with some big four, worked at a law firm, and just did a lot of regulation specific, which landed me where I'm now at Amazon, doing consumer privacy for worldwide operations.
A little bit different. I worked for a few years before coming to law school, and I was also an evening student. And so I worked full-time for Georgetown University and the government relations office. So I had somewhat of a compliance role in that function. And in going to law school, I knew that I wanted to do compliance investigations type work. And so this certificate program became available. I took those classes and received the certificate. And I was specifically looking for jobs post-graduation in compliance in white collar. And I've now been an associate at Hogan Lovells for 4 years in their investigations white collar group, which is under the litigation umbrella.
I'm completely opposite. I came into law school thinking I wanted to prosecute, and I tried that for a semester, interning, and completely decided that was not for me. Luckily enough, the CICR, I'm gonna always get this wrong, came up while I was here, and I really found a love for compliance. I bounced around a bit after law school. I clerked for a year in Montgomery County at the trial level. Really interesting. You learn a lot, hands-on work. Then I was at the vaccine court, a very specialized court in the Court of Federal Claims. A lot of Catholic alum have gone through that court. Great place to be, so I will always plug that. And through that, I networked with someone that ended up in the position I am now. So that was kind of my intro into healthcare. Now I'm doing healthcare, fraud, abuse, compliance investigations, kind of a bit of everything at Barnes and Thornburg.
Thank you all very much for that. And I will say, like, one of the things that I didn't fully appreciate until I came to law school was, you know, like, for me, like, securities law is my passion. You open the securities law door and then realize there's 10,000 doors behind it of different things within securities law that you can do. And I have no doubt that that's the same with corporate investigations and compliance as well. So with that in mind, like Ms. Dolan, I know that you have worked in practice and worked in house as well. Could you discuss a little bit about the different opportunities that exist for students who might be interested in career in either securities law or compliance and investigation?
Yeah, so more securities law or securities compliance, I guess. Which, as I said earlier, that just wasn't my first pick, and the reason for that is you kind of see yourself as a compliance officer. You got a big target on your head. When I was going through law school, the CCO roles were just coming out, and I just didn't want to see myself in that position, you know, being the person that the SEC wanted to talk to when they came in. But when I moved over to Tweedy, I was kind of comfortable with the idea that we were our products were very straightforward and very simple. So I thought, well, maybe I could do this. I wasn't going to be only compliance. I was going to be the associate general counsel as well. But I thought, well, maybe I can do this. You know, if all we're buying is stocks, like what could possibly go wrong? And that's mostly true. But I wouldn't have probably ventured down this path with, you know, like a crazy hedge fund, you know, trading alternatives or something that I wasn't comfortable with. And I think your experience as a CCO or as an assistant CCO or in compliance departments generally can be totally different depending on whether, you know, large firm, small firm, you know, the people you're working with, what the tone at the top is, like what the culture of compliance is of the firm. And definitely to the extent you can be picky on those points in interviews and, like, you know, choosy, which none of us can be in our first job, but, you know, to the extent you can be, that's where you want to be, right? As a compliance officer, you want to be at the firm that really wants to do the right thing, because it makes your job so much easier. And what I really love about compliance is I kind of like figuring out stuff. I like figuring out the law and figuring out how to comply with it. I'm just that kind of person. I like drafting policies and procedures and stuff like that. What I don't like about compliance is I don't like being the hall monitor or like sort of like the kindergarten room, you know, the teacher there. Like, you don't want to be the person that has to stand there all the time and you kind of are. So just keep that in mind. I have a friend who was recently interviewing for a compliance position, and the people she was interviewing with said, well, how good are you at fighting? And she said to herself, no, that's not the job for me. It's really not what I want to do, you know. So you know, things to think about. But I think there's a lot of possible ways forward today. Obviously, you guys are looking at law firms, and I would say, you know, think about the smaller law firms. Like any law firm that has a compliance practice area that you're interested in, or you might be interested in, drop your resume, drop a really nice cover letter, you know, follow up, like obviously network through your LinkedIn and your contacts. But I think starting at a smaller law firm, you might get even better experience than you would get starting at a larger law firm, because you know, smaller firms are, you know, sort of maybe a little less heavily staffed, and so they're going to be throwing more interesting projects at you. It's just what I think. Of course, you're looking at the larger law firms. I would say consider like corporate departments. Like consider whether you know people working at banks and corporations that have compliance departments that may have like, you know, entry-level openings in the legal departments. Probably thinking about that, but I know it's harder to get into those places like through the school program, so you kind of have to like leverage your network a little bit. Your parents' networks, your uncles' networks, whatever, you know. We used to have people come in like, you know, that Tweedy. I mean, they weren't paid internships, but we would buy friends and things who work for us and, you know, intern. It was a good experience. It looks good on a resume. It can help you find something that you're looking for. I would say in DC, I know everybody's concerned about the government freeze. I mean, you've still got the non-governmental agencies like the FINRA and stuff like that you're thinking about. But think too about the trade associations. You've got the investment, the ICI, Investment Company Institute. You've got the Investment Advisors Association here. You've got the Bond Dealers Association of America. See, I'm securities focused here. You've got the Mutual Fund Directors Forum. You've got SIFMA, the MFA, Alternative Investment Council. There's so many trade associations, maybe compliance people. The legal background is a huge plus in the compliance area. It's certainly not required. But it's a huge plus, and these guys know it is. Let's see. And then I was thinking about sort of like the smaller firms that are actually compliance focused. Like a lot of firms now are outsourcing their compliance. So, for example, the ACA, like that might be a place to look. And there's other outsourced compliance firms that a lot of smaller investment advisors, smaller broker dealers are relying on more and more in this world of outsourcing. So that's a place to look. But just always remember, put your best foot forward. Like you're going to an interview, make it lots of speak that I appreciate. Thank you for, smile, trust your best, and just don't be nervous. You're going to find some good jobs.
Certainly good advice. And for that, I'm going to turn over to my colleague, Adam.
Thank you again, Ms. Owen, for that response there. The next question is for Mr. Marchiori and Ms. Vincent at the end of the table there. So given your experience and perspective working in law firms, advising clients, what would you say are some of the emerging fields in compliance, corporate investigations, securities related fields? Just as an example, last semester we had a event here that was dedicated to compliance in AI. So that was something that we covered last semester. So, Ms. Marchiori, do you want to start?
Oh, sure. So I primarily work in the FCA space, so I would say False Claims Act. And so last year, the government covered almost $3 billion in the FCA space. And in the prior Trump administration, they were very active. And the current Attorney General, Ms. Bondi, was very active when she was Attorney General of Florida in the FCA space. So we would expect a lot of that fraud and waste and abuse that DOJ, other departments are going after to continue at a very high rate, those type of investigations. And those can be for all types of industries and regulations, et cetera. I will say some of the emerging things that we're dealing with and talking with client. One of them is AI, as you mentioned. Something I did not think about that is in the news that clients are very worried about is clients are using AI internally to help automate processes, forms, predict things for their businesses, and whether those processes, forms, intentionally or unintentionally create fraudulent records or bad advice. And so clients are worried about that. And clients are also worried about internal whistleblower complaints now with other regulations coming out, such as like DEI, the memo for DEI, yeah, thank you. And clients are worried about their own internal policies and how somebody might bring an action against them for those things. There's a lot of changing landscape with any new administration. And so it's a lot of figuring out the landscape and, advising clients as you're going on. But I think internally, how AI and internal policies for clients, they're always really focused on some of those areas.
So unfortunately, I don't have a ton of different. I also specialize in FCA, just more on the healthcare side. So of that 300 billion, a huge chunk of that is in healthcare fraud and abuse. It is always going to be big. It's continued to grow, and every year there are more claims. So a lot of times you'll get a whistleblower internally, a doctor, an employee, something like that will come through. So very similar to what Matt was saying. So we're looking at that, and we're going to continue to see that really expanding. Within healthcare, there's just a ton of different worlds of that. So we also look at cybersecurity for healthcare. As I'm sure everyone's aware, there's been lots of leaks that have happened, and that is going to become a whole new world of compliance concerns, what kind of security you have, what your policies are, what kind of alerting system you have, everything along those lines is really going to continue to grow as people get smarter and hackers can really get into anything. Along with Matt, I kind of expect the FCA to be the big area. I think AI is obviously going to be something we're going to see. We're actually seeing that internally. Our law firm, and I think lots of other law firms, are trying to deal with that on the compliance side internally as well. So being aware of that and how not just your clients, but also your law firm is having to deal with different compliance issues like AI. is gonna be something we're gonna see more of.
Great, thank you. Turn it over to Rob for the next question.
To say that the landscape is changing rapidly, I think is an understatement, no matter what area you're in. And so to that end, I was hoping that each of you could discuss kind of like, what is the most exciting thing about your practice that kind of makes you want to keep going back for more every day? Start with you, Mr. Burke.
Sure. Being in-house, you're a true generalist, and so every single day is something new, which is really, really fun and really entertaining. On any given day, you can deal with grants, employment law, immigration law, everything under the sun. So I really love being in-house because of that. You don't kind of get bogged down in a single issue, which some people love to do, but for me, I'd rather be able to work on a lot of different subject matter. So that keeps bringing me back. Specifically, I always said I love the employment space, and it's maybe not to this cutting edge as others, but both on the federal and state level, the laws and regulations that determine how you interact with your employees is constantly changing. In Maryland, there's a new law called family. Somebody gets paid a lot of money to figure out how to get the acronyms to spell things out. Family is FAMLI, and I can't remember what all the letters stand for. Yeah, exactly. Make this make sense. They really struggle sometimes to name these statutes to get it to spell something. But there's constantly new regulations on the federal and local and even municipal space that is affecting employment. And until AI replaces all of us, that's going to be a field that's constantly changing as expectations for the next generation going into the workforce is changing. So I really enjoy that area a lot.
Yeah, I honestly, AI, right? The SEC is so focused on it, with law firms so focused on it, with investment advisors so focused on AI and how they're using sort of predictive data analysis and providing investment advice and all that. It's definitely an exciting thing to focus on if it's the kind of thing that interests you. And then that might be the kind of thing like these guys were talking about, being there at the forefront of the Enron crisis and getting into energy that way. I had a friend who was there when the AML rules came out, and he just dug in and read everything there was to read about AML, and he quickly became like the firm's AML expert. He was the go-to guy. He was the first year, but he was the go-to guy. So if you find a topic like that that's new and interests you, you can really kind of ride on that in the right place. But in terms of the challenges or the difficult parts, I mean, I think I kind of covered that earlier. I think the hardest part with compliance is getting your associates and your colleagues to understand why things are the way they are. You do these compliance trainings and you walk them through the marketing rules and you walk them through, blue sky registration requirements and stuff like that. And it's befuddling. It feels like the SEC and the government is just there to break down your business more or less. Trying to get them around that. Seeing the benefits to being compliant is probably one of the biggest challenges, I think.
I'd say for me, Constellation Energy Corporation, for those of you who are not familiar with them, they're the largest green energy, carbon-free producer of energy in the country. So you don't think of the largest generating company in the country being from Baltimore, but they are. And it's 13,000 employees across several states. We have operations in almost all 50 states of some kind at some level with some product. And the variety of things you get to deal with are just endless. So I do cybersecurity, and that sounds sort of stovepiped, but we're doing regulatory compliance for nuclear plants, for federal energy plants. We're doing HIPAA for health. We're doing Coast Guard regulations for vessels taking deliveries over water for oil and fuel. The variety of things that you have to touch in a topic area is huge. I'm negotiating contracts. I'm doing insider threat investigations. I'm doing ethics investigations for mishandling and abuse of technology at the office. So you get pulled into a lot of things that you just don't think of yourself as an expert in, but you know the most about something related to it. And so you get called to the table and asked to give advice. So it's that in the spot work that I love. It's getting called to the table and with short notice being asked to give an opinion at the moment. that's kind of the exciting part. It's got some gravitas to it that keeps me coming back for more.
I think similar experience. What I've had past 3 years with Amazon, just the sheer size of the company and its impact on lines of businesses. To many, Amazon is the stuff that delivers your package next day or same day. There's so many different lines, so many businesses. 1.7 million employees with all fulfillment drivers across the world. So I have a chance to work across a lot of time zones and a lot of different markets. And right now, this is worldwide operations fulfillment, but getting an opportunity to, and I think compliance, I'll say this too, compliance is defined a little bit differently, and I think that's important to know if you're coming from a law firm perspective and client serving, as opposed to in-house and not even in-house counsel, in-house business, because there's so many different facets. I'm working, I'm not counsel for Amazon, but I'm working with lawyers, and most of the people that I work with, if they have a software engineering background or a business background, many of them are lawyers. They're just not practicing general counsel position. So I think what's interesting, back to the point about what is compliance, is that I find myself very fortunate where we are moving so fast that law and compliance is not caught up, and we're in a position where we have the biggest target on our back, along with Apple and Google and Microsoft and Meta. And a big thing is, the title is trust, customer trust. It's really maintaining that in the absence of a black letter law or a regulation that's going to say, no, that's wrong. So making a lot of decisions and really putting our leadership in our role. It's not me making a decision as a legal position. It's completing a holistic assessment and putting my leadership, my VPs and senior VPs in a position where they can make an informed risk decision. It's not a matter of being compliant or not, especially in the space that we're in. And it also, I'll say this too, Alicia had mentioned, like, it happens to be a good position and work for a company that cares about doing the right thing, the good thing. And I know that Amazon, along with other tech companies, certainly have made headlines on different occasions. But I do feel fortunate to work in a team that does put that first and understand what the bar is and elevate that for purposes of customer trust.
So I've been pretty fortunate to work for a large firm that has like a worldwide reach for compliance and investigations. And so we have two sort of main tranches of that work. One is internal, where you get hired by a company to do something small, discreet, usually reporting to a president, a CEO, a board of directors. And you have a government-facing investigation, which are normally confidential, just known grand jury subpoena, some type of CID or subpoena. And those have ranged across industry groups. So you have healthcare, you have finance, you have technology, you have manufacturing process, food, clothing, etc. And so the challenges of quickly learning a new sector, of learning a new company, of learning the people in it, as well as how to apply those facts to the law is like really exciting and energizing, I think. I think a lot of us are like sort of continuous learners, and we like to like learn and apply the law in various circumstances. And when you're having to go from, oh, I'm doing a manufacturer to insider trading to healthcare in like one day, you're really putting some of those skills to the test. And I just find that like really intellectually stimulating and rewarding.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy, so even though I'm in healthcare has splits of 10 different groups. So we get pulled into employment, contracts, transactions, pretty much any time. So all of that I'm doing almost the opposite. I'm reading my healthcare board, but then working with other people from the corporate teams and stuff like that. So quickly adjusting and learning that I really enjoyed. And honestly, I really love the investigations. When you're pulled into a company, you have to quickly learn who their team members are, what each team member is doing. Are they outsourcing work somewhere else? You're likely gonna have to work with 3 different companies. So you'll have a client and lots of other people. So learning those interactions and all that client-facing work is something I really enjoy and I think is a big part of our job is making them trust you and want to come back to you and believe that they, like everyone said, believe that they need compliance and that it's sometimes that it's going to save them money. In the end, there's a lot of times you have to convince them it's worth it in the beginning, so you don't have to come back to us in the end, or we don't have to go to the government. We don't have to report something. So if we can do it now, we can put policies in place. Really, that kind of work I think is really important.
Thank you.
So many of us who are about to graduate, still looking for our post-grad jobs, are kind of in an awkward position now following the recent federal hiring freeze and other current events connected to that. So to that end, what kinds of non-government career opportunities would you recommend students in compliance, corporate investigations areas that were previously looking at federal government jobs or anything that kind of affected by that area? Mr. Burke?
Sure. So I think there's three areas I would recommend looking. One is actually not, if you were already interested in the federal government, people don't think about it, but the state and municipal governments have huge departments, and I interact with them often, and there's an attorney whose job is compliance embedded in almost every one of the departments on the state level. So there's huge opportunity that isn't really looked at there. There's tens of millions of people who work for state and municipal government. So look there, it's a great area to get in on the ground floor. It's a great area to learn about the laws that are affecting the corporations that you may then want to work for after the fact. And that would be the second area is obviously both public and, I should say, charitable and non-charitable corporations. In the kind of non-charitable world, finance and health are probably two of the most compliance necessary industries. So obviously huge opportunities there. And the non-for-profit world where I am, we have a lot of compliance that we have to deal with because even with things going on the federal level, both state and private grants, which are a huge portion of how a lot of non-for-profits function, come with their own set of compliance issues. So, you know, you look to statutes and regulations and think, well, that's it. Well, you take private money, they get to set your rules. And there can be a lot of interesting twists and turns when you take money from big trusts or from, you know, wealthy individuals who have their own agendas and trying to go through what they may want before you take the money, making sure you understand what you have to do after, and then the compliance aspect as you work through those projects. So the non-profit world is got a lot of compliance opportunities, and every even mid-sized non-for-profit that does charitable work is going to need compliance help along the way. So state is obviously a good place to start if you're looking for the Fed, but then if not, I would definitely say non-for-profits and corporations in the health and finance area where I'd look next.
Mr. Edwards, I know you've worked at FERC in the past. Did you have anything to add with your that kind of past experience?
Yeah, I do actually, and I think, you know, it's gonna be my one piece of advice too, is don't discount things that don't have lawyer titles in them. Don't read past it because it says analyst or something else. Look in the job descriptions for things in the federal government that say you're an analyst, but you're coordinating with the Office of General Counsel closely on rulemakings as an example. So when I was at FERC, I was in the Office of General Counsel, but for every rulemaking, I was paired with an analyst in whatever division was pushing out the policies, whether it was an economic analyst or it was for a liability specialist. There was always somebody paired with me, and the two of us ran the rule start to finish. So you're going to be in the door, you're going to have the exposure to the topic area, you're going to start building that knowledge base that you need to be a good attorney, and you'll be there when a position opens up, you'll have relationships established. So don't discount, you know, that avenue. If you know that you want to do energy law, getting in that building is important, not necessarily getting in the right job right out of the gate. So don't discount those roles that are non-legal, that they're at every corporation. As Matthew said, we have 20 people who are lawyers by training, but not lawyers by title, who are doing essentially legal work as attorneys, you know, in a sense. So always look for those off-brand jobs.
Yeah, and I was going to say, someone else already said it, but it's worth repeating. your network is so important. CUA has a phenomenal network, and when I was here, it wasn't necessarily tapped or pushed to the students. I think that's changed, which is wonderful. Every step of my way of my career, there's been a CUA alum. The internship I got while I was in law school, I clerked for a CUA alum in Prince George's County District Court. The law firm I went to was made up exclusively of CUA alum, and it was a CUA professor who made the call to get me in-house. So make those relationships while you're here, meet with your professors, reach out to alumni. I've never had an alumni, slam the door on me. Maybe they couldn't help me, but they were at least willing to talk to me. So the network, I know it's been said before, but it's worth repeating. Start building your network now, start utilizing it, find people who are in the space you want to be in and talk to them and find those people who you can pick up the phone and call when you're ready to get a job.
I think one thing I'll just add to follow up my prior answer, don't be afraid of topic areas that aren't familiar to you. None of us here were experts in what we're doing before we did them. I was a psychology major. I had no background in IT, and the first computer I touched, I broke. So you don't know what you're gonna like and enjoy. So don't discount things just because the topic is not security law or something else. The same rulemaking, administrative law practices apply no matter what agency you're in. Yes, the subject will change, but the soft skills you're going to build in those roles are going to be the same from job to job across the entirety of federal government work. So don't be afraid to look for the right job, but in a different topic area than you had initially thought of.
Thank you.
And then as our final question, I wanted to ask you all about, how can students best position themselves as they transition from what is likely to be one of their last educational areas to the workforce, and what opportunities that you all feel that they should focus on to make themselves as remarkable as they can be, especially as a first year, second year, you still have that time to really make yourself as remarkable as possible prior to entering the workforce. And this is for all of them, so. Fair game, whoever would like to start in the middle. Change it up a bit. So I mentioned soft skills a minute ago. That's one of the most important things when we're interviewing candidates now is how developed are your soft skills for things like making arguments, writing PowerPoint presentations, giving memos, dealing with differing crowds, different levels of leadership, working with implementation teams, analysts. How well can you talk to outside peers? How well can you talk to an industry trade group? These are all things that you're looking for in addition on a resume that you have a well-rounded skill set. It's not, did you take these 12 courses? That's for the bar exam. It's what kinds of things did you do while you were here? Did you do moot court? Did you do some writing? If it's not law review or a journal, did you do an independent study with the professor to write something? But look for those ways you can complement your soft skill set, so that when you do interview, you have something to talk about in lots of different categories of experience. So yes, you may not have 5 years at the DOJ on your resume, but you can talk about, the couple of papers you took with a professor who mentored you and how you did the research and who you interviewed and pull from those stories. So look for those soft skills that may be missing from your resume now because you're focused on one or two things and try and fill it.
I'll jump in. That's great advice, Phil. I couldn't agree with you more on all of those points. And I think you're all in this. You're all in it right now, whether you're at 1L, 2L, or you're graduating as a 3L soon. You all have grit. Recognize that grit and a singular focus can really take you away from opportunity. And just to compliment what William says, keep your eyes open. I always think about transferable skills. Take a step back and say, what have I done? What am I good at? Not good at. What don't be too close-minded. I think you should. I think what was remarkably effective for me and a lot of my fellow law students when I graduated in a very difficult market in 2010 was the ability to think and change and know that, hey, you know what? There's an opportunity here, and I'm going to transfer some skills in a way where I can articulate them in the soft skills, as you were saying, William, and get you in the door, get you back to it. But really what is important is being a little bit creative, a little bit open and tenacious, knowing that there's not one path, because I think that is just setting yourself up for a much harder experience.
Yeah, I just want to echo what they said, that soft skills, like having something to talk about besides like a legal class or a legal education, being able to talk about transferable skills in any setting, I think is really valuable. So look for opportunities to like just increase your knowledge just in other areas besides specifically what you're learning here. And I also want to echo what Patrick said earlier. Networking is not just about like exchanging or getting a business card or like adding someone on LinkedIn. Like, be genuinely curious about what someone's doing, what they do. You're gonna find people who are incredibly passionate about it, and you're gonna learn what you may like or not like about that thing. And if you're very interested in what somebody's doing and they're interested in like explaining it, you're gonna get career advice through those conversations. You're gonna get like meaningful connections, and hopefully that can lead to referrals and things that Patrick was talking about. So I would just say, just be genuinely interested in networking with no ulterior motive, like upfront, because it's pretty transactional at that point. So just try to like learn and engage with people.
Yeah, coming off of that, I feel like I struggled to network at first. I just felt uncomfortable, but everyone understands like that initial email is a little bit awkward. And just continuing saying, yeah, like, I'm interested in what you're doing, I want to hear more about it, is kind of the way to step into that door, and people get it. Everyone has had to do that. It's something you just need to do. And along that, during law school, I am a big advocate of intern different places, try different things out. It will tell you what you like, what you don't like, what you have interest in. I just think it's a really great way to get your foot in the door, and especially if you're someone who's gone straight from undergrad to law school, it gives you a way to talk about something and say, yeah, I went from do this internship, even though I went straight from law school, I did all these other things while I was here. And it shows you can do 10 different things at once while you're in law school. So always a great sign.
Yeah, and as far as the soft skills go, you really can't see them on the resume, so try to be creative and letting the people that you're interviewing see them. Like, I just be kind of practiced. Maybe if you're going to a particular firm, like, read up on that firm, like figure out what's going on there, think about what their challenges might be. And obviously you guys aren't going to know what the challenges are, but I think even just asking questions so that the person you're interviewing with knows that you're interested. Like, I wouldn't try to bullshit that you know all about, some reason SE theories, don't do that. But ask about that release and how they think it's going to impact what they do. And I think that can help give you an edge. And then as far as the networking goes, somebody told me recently, and I think this is really good advice, although I'm really bad at networking and I'm not terribly great at LinkedIn. But if you find people that you like, just engage with them. They post a nice article and just comment, hey, that was a really interesting article. Or if you're afraid to do it publicly, just you can LinkedIn, it's like the instant messaging. I forget what it's called, something like that, email, because it shows that you're following them, you're paying attention, and that you're interested. And it kind of keeps you in mind when opportunities come up. If you can do those kinds of things, so just that might be helpful.
Two final thoughts on that, echoing a little bit of what others have said, but one is when you went out of law school, you don't necessarily have a lot of experience. You should have a little bit of experience, but you probably don't have a lot. So it's really important to be able to look at your experience and explain when you go in for that interview or reach out to an alumni how or what you've learned from that experience and how you can apply it even indirectly. I have leaned a lot on the experience I had while I was in law school as a full-time employee. I was a night student as well, worked full-time. And that experience, which was not legal in nature, but was compliant in nature, I lean on a lot when I was right out of law school. So that's really important. And then my second point is get some experience. At the risk of being one of those alumni who come back and tell war stories, I worked full-time, went to law school at night, and during the summers, I did 40 hours in 4 days so I could do a one-day internship. And no one's paying for a one-day internship. So I had to do an unpaid internship on Fridays during the summer, but it was something I could say as I got out that I did this. I worked in this office, I worked in this law firm, even if it was for 1 day a week. So go out, find something that you can do in the legal field or an adjacent field that you can then turn around and say, I've got something. It's not just the classes, although those are incredibly important, but some real life experience. And a shameless plug at the end, my office, the general counsel of the Archdiocese, we just lost our paralegal, and I've sold my boss, the general counsel. I'm bringing on a student for a partial or full-time paralegal job that is paid. So if anyone's interested, see me after. We want to bring on a CUA alum or a CUA student rather for a year or two to get some experience. And so if that's something you're interested in, please see me after. But even if it's not with us, go get something, whatever it is, so you have that as you leave and look into the workforce.
Great, thank you all very much for all your insights to all the questions that we had today. We have a few minutes left. If we have any questions from the audience, raise your hand and feel free. Jennifer.
Yeah, I had a question. I believe it was Mr. Edwards. You said to not be afraid of jobs that don't have lawyer in the title, and you take a job that maybe is an analyst position. Do you have any guidance on once you're in there about how to move, if you want to move into that lawyer position, like what those next steps might look like?
Yeah, I do. So one thing I'll tell you, and we're all probably sitting here because of it, people like to be asked what they do and how they got there. So, you're in the building, set up time with people who are attorneys, or if you're working with other lawyers, and spend time talking to them, just asking them about their career, what it's like working in general counsel's office. But use that time to express that you do have an interest in moving into law full time, so that people are aware of that. So the more people you sit down and talk to, get their experience level to help you in the job you have, you can also explain to them that you have a career trajectory that you have, planned. At companies like mine, you have an individual development plan where you can put those things formally. And I have listed out both my legal goals and my business side positions that I'd be interested in moving into if there were things available. So you might actually have a function within the company or the place you're at where that can formally be done and documented. But it's really letting your supervisor know, using those informational interviews to tell people that you're interested who may not see you every day or see your work. And that way, when you do come around for that open position, you're not a stranger, or you've been talking to people. And so when they start talking in the hallway, it's like, oh yeah, I did talk to them. I remember her saying that she was interested in an attorney role. That makes sense. So just make yourself present and introduce yourself around.
A quick add to that, I think it's a great question. Coming from Amazon now, prior to that was Capital One. Capital One has what's called Legal Flex, and it's for individuals that want to, it's kind of a rotation for full-time employees where they can work in different legal role capacities. Try it out on a rotation, whether it's a quarter or a year. And likewise, I knew a lot of lawyers there that started counsel and said, hey, I think investment banking is really cool and I'm going to shift around. I think with larger corporations, there is, and I'll say that a similar program exists where I'm at Amazon. In corporations, there's really, at least I've seen, an appetite to continue to challenge employees and by offering things like that. Don't stay in one role too long. A lot of us are here because we're hungry for knowledge and learning, and that as a mechanism within the workplace affords the opportunity to do that, to go into a specific legal counsel role or exit it. So I think that's not readily apparent with all companies. I'm not sure that it is at Amazon and Capital One, but I think it's important to note that those type of opportunities do exist.
And legal and compliance kind of go hand in hand. You're probably not working in a compliance department without working with, associate general counsels and other lawyers wherever you end up. And also, as long as you sort of stay abreast of like the legal stuff that really interests you, I think it'd be easy to lateral into a not CCO, but a compliance officer / associate general counsel type position, especially at the smaller firms, because those are often dual-headed.
Any other questions? Mary Margaret?
This is a question for Mr. Edwards, where you were mentioning, like, don't be afraid to get into something that you may not be familiar with. So how you went into like the tech field and you didn't really have a background in that. How do you sell yourself in that? Like, I can understand the talk up your soft skills, but I'm assuming like they still kind of want someone with a particular knowledge or something.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And so looking for like, what brought you to energy? And they're expecting me to say, I've always wanted to do energy. And I can tell you that it was the last thing that I wanted to do. It was actually a big groan that I couldn't couldn't get out of interviews without talking about it. So I eventually stopped fighting it, but you do need an answer for that question. And I think you anchor it in the topic area that's broader. So, I don't have a particular interest in healthcare, but my interest has grown because I've been looking at these compliance issues. And now that I'm looking at healthcare, I see you have the same problems that I was studying in securities back when I was in law school. So, try and come up with that bridge answer that you're going to use to sort of bolt in, but use this broad category. Everything we do in compliance is in every space, in every company, the same way. You're doing, sanctions compliance the same way in energy as you are in healthcare, as you are in transportation, as you are in, communications. So you can use those broad categories to move your way through different topic areas that may not be there. And probably the person you're talking to didn't take a linear path to that career too, and it's going to resonate somewhere along the line.
Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, you guys all talked a lot about artificial intelligence and how you guys are to deal with it more often now. Like, I don't know the first thing about it. So in 3 years, within those 3 years, that'd be something that I try and find more and more about as it's getting more prevalent. I'm gonna have to probably be working with it.
Yeah, if it's not your legal practice, like it probably is for ours, you will be using the tools. And if you're not using the tools directly, you're going to be using vendors and companies that are using the tools. And you're going to want to understand the outputs that they're having. So, that's going to be as essential to your position in the future as the internet was to computers when you started having connectivity. It's really that foundational to what you're going to be doing in the legal or any profession going forward.
When you think about AI, it can do all sorts of stuff. I know somebody who was on a conference call, and at the end of the conference call, there was like an announcement that the AI secretary could send minutes. And I said, what? Like, the last thing in the world you want is your AI secretary preparing minutes. Like, no, but they're already out there. So it's amazing how people want to use it, because it could be so helpful. But I mean, in a case like that, it could be really disastrous, right? Depending on what was said at the meeting and what the tone was and how AI didn't pick up on that. And now you've got a record that you're going to turn into a regulator when it's requested that you may not have wanted in the first place. So I think AI is definitely a big.
I have a quick response just to follow on to that, because I think that's, you're saying, you have very little to no experience or understanding of AI. I think as a tool, you'll learn it because it's gonna be brought into the function. There's so little regulation on it right now. So it's hey, how do we handle this? What do we think of? If you got some time and interest, there's law on it. It's not effective yet, but I think the EU AI Act is a really good place to start, even in a summarization, because it's the spirit of what we're trying to regulate, what the dangers are. So it can be very overwhelming to understand what does AI mean now, and what does it mean in 4 years, and how can I use it, what's the world going to be like. I think it's really important to, it'll help for specific use cases in understanding, well, what's the spirit of the regulation? What are we trying to avoid, and what are the perceived dangers? Because it's not rolling with regulation, and it's always changing. So I think the tech in this case is moving a lot faster, and understanding what lay ahead may, through that law that is not yet enforced, will give you perhaps perspective you wouldn't otherwise have of what tech is available now and where it's going.
Just to follow up with that too, being the person that comes to an interview and says, hey, I know about AI legislation that's coming out or possibly is coming out would be a huge bonus.
Yeah.
Looking at 2 candidates and one is like, I understand AI. I think anyone at my firm would immediately say, okay, we're interested in that. That's like an emergency practice group for our firm, and it's going to get pulled into almost everything. So that's a great way to just sell yourself as well, as like someone that, lots of people in the firm are not going to understand AI. So if you can come in and say, yeah, I understand it. And even if it's not, you understand all of it, but you understand a little bit, that's ahead of everyone else. So that's like a great way to really sell yourself.
Great, I think that's all the time we have.
Yeah.
Professor Douglas is going to close us out here.
Well, I certainly learned a lot today. I really appreciate that. And I want to say a big thanks for our speakers. And thank you to our sponsors, Professor Glenn and I from CICR are delighted to sponsor these wonderful people and to talk about all of these things. For all of you and for those who will watch the recording, and Dean Dietrich and Professor Murphy from the Securities Law program. So thank you. We hope you'll join us at the reception. And just on a final note, we are always ethical in the compliance investigations and public responsibility program. So we have a little token for our speakers, and I assure you it's with all your ethical guidelines. Thank you so much. Come on out to the reception.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
We're gonna Semester Center.
Yeah, I can take any holiday.
Well, you might have to grab something that you guys can.
Yeah, literally frustrating. Yeah, I cannot see.
Can't be in the same space.
Yeah.
One of these papers.
Thank you so much. Thank you.